Last time we went over Star Wars swear words from Ichuda to Slimo. That was part 1, and now welcome to part 2. We're going to look even into more Star Wars swear words and slang, and dive right into it. If you didn't check out the first video, I will link that below. But now with that out of the way, let's get into it. This is Star Wars slang and swear words part 2. If you're new, be sure to subscribe for regular Star Wars content, from theories to deep dives and all in between, right here on Dank Farrik. Though I think it's time we jump into the reason why we're all here. Let's do this.
Do it.
Alright, now first on the list, it is a term that came to us from the wonderfully polite mouth of our favorite smuggler and scoundrel. That's right, Han Solo. The term is Moofmilker.
Hey, some Moofmilker put a compressor on the ignition line.
A Moofmilker derives from the animal known as a moof. A moof was a cow-like animal. It had similar hooved feet and produced milk from its udders that was oddly scented, something that most milk, even the good stuff that Aunt Peru served up, didn't have. But yes, these were simple creatures, often milked by simple farmers, and it's therein where the term comes from, hence the insult, Moofmilker. Basically, it's calling somebody a dim-witted person and a simple-brained person, not intelligent in the slightest. And while it's not one of my favorites, it's a worthy mention, so remember friends, don't be a Moofmilker. Next on the list, we dive into the world of Huttese again. Last time we covered terms like Slimo and Poodoo, but now we're looking at the term podunky. This was a word used in Huttese and even those who didn't fully know the dialect to call somebody the equivalent of a punk, or if we want to get real about it, a punk ass. In the real world, that used to be a big insult, especially when Huttese was being fleshed out in that time frame, and in many ways it still is. That translates to the galaxy far, far away in a far more eternal manner, thus making podunky everlasting. Nobody wants to be called a punk, just like nobody wants to be called scruffy looking. So the next time somebody spills a drink on you at the cantina, know that if you call them a podunky, you may be in for a little fist fight. Don't say I didn't warn you.
Who's next?
This next word reaches back to the days of the Clone Wars, many years before the Battle of Yavin, in which would become the galactic marker of dates and time. The clones were known to have an array of terms and insults that they used with one another. Clankers, for example, that mostly stayed in the ranks, referring to the droid army. This word though, the one I'm about to say, it slipped out from their loose lips. It's the word blob. Yup, blob. B-L-O-B. Just look at the screen. It works in a few ways, one being that just being called the blob is insult enough, but it's also an acronym. It stands for Big Lump on Board, and was said or spoken when military or naval officers thought there were useless civilians or diplomatic figures on the transport roster of the starships.
And the Jedi Rebellion has been foiled.
What's happened?
The Chancellor's been elaborating on a plot by the Jedi to overthrow the Senate.
After the fall of the Republic, some clones made personal lives for themselves, and with that, the word spread. Eventually, you'd begin to hear it from freighter captains on privateer ships to Imperial and Rebel naval officers. To them, there would always be blobs, people that weren't essential to the crew or functions of the ship, something the naval types really disliked. I mean, clearly.
It's not impossible. I used to bullseye Womprats in my T-16 back home. They're not much bigger than 2 meters.
So moving on, before you jump in that T-16 you have back home, slow your roll before you go to bullseye any Womprats. While our young Luke Skywalker certainly meant the critters that inhabit Tatooine, I don't. Just like galactic citizens used to use moofs and their handlers as insults, they also like to use this rodent from the planet furthest from. While Womprat doesn't have any absolute definition, it certainly is an insult you can level at somebody when they say something you aren't fond of, or if they just offended you. Truth is, nobody likes Womprats. Just like sand, they're irritating and they get everywhere.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Now, I do have something to admit. That's the end. We only covered a few here. I am saving the best for last, which does of course include Dank, Farrik, and other terms that I think you've been waiting for. I mean, how could I not cover Dank Farrik, obviously? But it'll be the grand finale to these 3 videos. If you enjoyed this, drop a like and check out the first video if you haven't yet. It's popping on the screen now and I will link it below. But until next time, my fellow Moofmilkers, stay safe and may the Force be with you always.